Now then, Isabel, I've got a real treat for you here. I've got Dick Whittington and his cat. And you'll notice it's from the Ladybird series again. And we read one of those the other day, didn't we? And look at this. This book also belonged to Melanie Lewis. Melanie Lewis must have been a very well-read little girl, I think. She must have enjoyed this story. Shall we have a little look? Here we go. Dick Whittington and his cat. Once upon a time there was a poor boy who was called Dick Whittington. His mother and father were dead. Oh, that's sad. That's not a nice start. He had nobody to care for him. Dick lived in a small village in the country. Oh, probably a bit like Sageston. He tried to work for his living. Oh, a bit like Nana. But he could not always find work to do. Dick was very poor. Oh, like Nana as well. His clothes were very thin and ragged, and sometimes he had very little to eat. Not so much like Nana now. In those days, people did not often travel far from the village in which they lived. Dick's village was a long way from London. When the village people talked of London, they spoke of it as a wonderful place. They said that all the people in the city of London were rich. They even said the streets of London were paved with gold. Dick listened to these tales and he longed to go to London. Dick thought that if he went to London, he'd be able to pick up gold from the streets. Then he would become rich and need never feel cold or hungry again. Dick made his mind up to go to London, although he had no idea how far it was. He made his few clothes into a bundle and tied the bundle to the end of his stick. See, we should just do that these days, wouldn't we? It'd be far easier. You could use the stick as a walking stick. You're not carrying too much. It's a much better idea. Pack light. That's good work, Dick. Then he set off to walk along the road to London. Dick walked a long way, but he did not reach London. Just as he was beginning to feel very tired, a hay cart came along on the road. The cart was pulled by big horses and driven by a kind-faced man. The driver stopped the cart and said to Dick, "Where are you going to, my lad?" "I'm going to London, sir," replied Dick. "Then jump up beside me," said the driver. "I'll take you to London." He was from a strange place, that man. It was an unknown village where they talked funny. When they drove into the city of London, Dick gazed about him in wonder. First he was surprised to see how many people were in the streets. He'd never seen so many people before in all his life. Then he was amazed to see all the fine churches, shops and houses. When Dick got over his first wonderment, he began to look for the streets that were paved with gold. Nowhere could he find them. It would be nice if the streets were paved with gold, wouldn't it? It'd be lovely. It grew dark and Dick was tired and hungry. He had nowhere to sleep, so he curled up in the doorway and went to sleep there. Next morning, Dick tried to find out work for himself. He walked along street after street, asking people for work, but nobody had a job to give him. When night came, Dick was so weak from hunger and tiredness that he sank down on the nearest doorstep. Now, it happened that this house belonged to a rich man named Mr. Fitzwarren. He was I hope that's not a man there. That can't be a man, surely. He was a merchant who made his money from selling things to people in other countries. Mr. Fitzwarren's cook found Dick on the doorstep and was angry. "You lazy boy," she cried. "What are you doing there? Get up from my master's doorstep." Oh, she's the cook, thank goodness for that. Poor Dick tried to rise, but he was too weak. At that very moment, Mr. Fitzwarren himself arrived home. Mr. Fitzwarren was a kind-hearted man. He spoke gently to Dick and listened to his story. "If it's work you want," he said, "you can work in my house for my cook. Where you will have plenty to eat and a bed to sleep in." Mr. Fitzwarren then told his cook to take Dick in, feed him and find him fresh clothes. Dick was so happy he could hardly find the words in which to thank Mr. Fitzwarren. Dick's happiness did not last long. He soon found the cook was an unkind woman. Oh, she didn't look very kind from her face, did she? She was scolding him, and sometimes she used to beat him. Mr. Fitzwarren had a daughter named Alice. She was kind, like her father, and she knew the cook was cruel to Dick. Alice took pity on Dick and forbade the cook to hit him. This made things easier for Dick, although he still had to work very hard. Dick's bed was cold in the attic at the top of the house. The attic was overrun with rats and mice. Oh, Nana stayed in a few hotels like that. At night, as Dick tried to sleep, the rats and mice ran over his bed. He couldn't rest. Oh, if only I had a cat, thought Dick. He would be a friend to me and she would chase all the rats and mice away. But all the money that Dick had in the world was 1 penny. Oh dear, 1 penny. He's richer than Nana. Hang on a second. The next day, Dick went to the market with his penny in his pocket. There he saw a woman holding a cat in her arms. "Please will you sell me your cat?" Dick asked the woman. "I'm not sure I want to sell her," said the woman. "She was a grand cat for catching mice." She was from the same place as that bloke who drove the cart. "That's just what I need," said Dick. Then he pleaded so hard that at last the woman agreed to sell her cat for a penny. From that day, Dick's life became happier. He loved his cat and he looked upon her as his friend. He slept well at night because the cat chased away all the rats and mice. Now Mr. Fitzwarren had many ships that sailed to distant lands. Whenever a ship sailed, Mr. Fitzwarren let everyone in his house send something with the captain. These things were sold for good prices in other countries. In this way, everyone had a chance to make extra money for themselves. One day, Mr. Fitzwarren called all the servants together. He told them that a ship was ready to sail. Everyone except Dick had something to sell. "Do you not want to send something on my ship?" said Mr. Fitzwarren. "I have nothing in the world except my cat," replied Dick. "Then you must send your cat," said Alice. Poor Dick did not really want to part with his cat, but to please Alice, he agreed at last. Oh gosh, that was a big move. The cook made fun of Dick. Oh, she's horrible, isn't she? Saying, "Who ever heard of sending a cat on Mr. Fitzwarren's ship? What use will it be?" Dick missed his cat and wished he could never send her away. Once more he could not sleep at night because of the mice running over his bed. Dick was so unhappy he made his mind up to run away. Early one morning he crept out the house before anybody was awake. Dick had not gone far when the bells of the Bow Church began to ring. The bells seemed to be ringing this tune to Dick. "Turn again, Whittington, Lord Mayor of London. Turn again, Whittington, thrice Mayor of London." If I'm to be Lord Mayor of London, thought Dick, I will turn again. So before anyone missed him, he turned back to Mr. Fitzwarren's house and let himself in. Meanwhile, on the ship, Dick's cat was making herself very useful. The ship was overrun with rats and mice. Dick's cat was a very fine rat catcher, and she soon killed hundreds of them. After sailing for many weeks, the ship came to a faraway country. The captain sent to the king of the country, asking if he wanted to buy some of the things on the ship. The king then invited the captain to come to the palace. Ooh, nice. A wonderful meal was prepared, or probably about the standard Nana prepares, for the queen and the king and the captain. Many servants carried in the food on gold and silver dishes and set it in front of them. But before anyone could take a bite, hundreds of rats rushed into the room. The servants tried to drive them back with big sticks, but it was no use. In no time at all, the rats had eaten all the food from the gold and silver dishes. Ooh, those horrible rats. Oh, and look at that food. It looks lovely. Wow, look at it all. The captain was astonished by this sight. He turned to the king and said, "Why do you put up with these rats, your majesty?" "There's nothing we can do about it," replied the king. "Every time we sit down to food, it's the same. My wise men have tried to make spells, but they have not managed to get rid of the rats." "Why don't you just get a cat?" said the captain. "Why don't you just get a cat?" "A cat," said the queen. "What is a cat?" The captain described the cat. The king and queen told him there was no such thing as animal like that in their country. "What would I give to have a cat?" cried the king. "Well, what would you give?" asked the captain. "I have a cat on board my ship." "I would give half my kingdom," replied the king. It's not not really thinking it through there, is he? Because if there's no other cats, then once that cat dies, he's not going to have any more cats, is he? So it's not a long-term investment, is it? The captain went back to his ship, picked up Dick's cat and returned to the palace. He arrived just as a meal was being served. The rats were beginning to eat the food on the silver and gold dishes. The cat jumped out the captain's arm and she killed dozens of rats, and the rest fled in fear. The king and queen were so astonished and delighted. "Oh, captain, we must have that cat," cried the queen. Oh, she was a clever cat, wasn't he? The king agreed to buy Dick's cat. The queen asked to see what else the captain had for sale. The sailors carried to the king's palace all the goods they had to sell. The king and queen bought everything. For Dick's cat, the king paid 10 times as much as he'd paid for all the other things put together. He gave the captain a casket full of gold and jewels in exchange for the cat. Oh! When the ship got home, the captain went straight to Mr. Fitzwarren and told him the good news. Mr. Fitzwarren was glad to hear that all the goods on the ship had been sold for so much money. He was especially pleased that Dick's cat had made him a fortune. Mr. Fitzwarren sent a servant to the kitchen saying, "Ask Mr. Whittington to come up here, please." Dick thought the servant was making fun of him. Mr. Fitzwarren handed Dick the casket of jewels. "You are now a very rich man, Mr. Whittington," he said. "Your cat has made you a fortune." Dick could hardly believe this news. He thanked Mr. Fitzwarren and the captain with all his heart. Miss Alice was very happy to hear about Dick's good fortune. "First you must buy yourself some new clothes," she said. Dick did so, and very smart he looked in his new clothes. Dick was now a wealthy man. When he asked Mr. Fitzwarren if he could marry his daughter, Alice, Mr. Fitzwarren gladly gave his consent. Some years later, Dick became Lord Mayor of London. Indeed, he was Lord Mayor of London 3 times, so the Bow Bells had been right when they said, "Turn again, Whittington, Lord Mayor of London. Turn again, Whittington, thrice Mayor of London." Well, what a lovely happy ending Dick Whittington had. He was a very lucky boy, wasn't he? But I wonder if he missed his cat when he gave it away. But I expect he could go and buy another one and maybe send another one over to the king and queen as well when theirs died. That was a lovely story. I hope you enjoyed it. Night night.